when the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world."
The triptych includes 3 episodes. Ascension. Last Judgment. And Pentecost. This triptych, donated to Cardinal Lorenzo Corsini, has long been the subject of debate among scholars. Indeed, it was not clear whether the 3 panels were conceived as a unified work, or the result of a later rearrangement and combination. Doubts arose first of all from the unusual juxtaposition of the 3 episodes depicted, but also from an erroneous reading of a Corsini inventory, according to which the panels were donated separately and then assembled. However, recent studies have disproved both the latter hypothesis and the alleged incongruity of the 3 episodes. In fact, the solemnity of the Ascension concludes the earthly life of Jesus, who with his body, in the presence of the apostles, physically joins the Father, never to appear again on earth until his second coming for the Last Judgment. Moreover, Jesus' disciples, starting with the Ascension, begin to prepare themselves for the mission that Christ will entrust to them through the Holy Spirit at Pentecost, reaffirming in a sense the birth of the Church itself. The central panel with the Last Judgment represents a reduced variation of a subject that Fra Angelico painted on several occasions. In the painting from the Florentine church of Santa Maria degli Angeli, and in the painting from Berlin. Above and in the center, Christ, in a radiant golden almond with raised rays, turns towards the earth. He sits on the throne of his second coming, consisting of clouds. Jesus have a cross on his halo, a reminder of his mission of redemption. And he is dressed in a long white tunic, tinged with light blue and embroidered with golden stars, covered with a robe, to emphasize his role as supreme judge. He pronounces the final sentence with his arm raised. The hand reveals the sign of the nails of the cross, which can also be felt on the feet, although hidden by an atmospheric veil. The wound on the side is also perceptible. He assumes an eloquently rhetorical pose, reminiscent of Christ the Judge in the vault of the chapel of St. Bricius. He holds a book in his hand, with the letters Alpha and Omega.
It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end.
Christ is surrounded by the angelic hosts and 10 saints, also seated on cloud banks. The various colors of the angels' robes would testify to their relative hierarchies, although it is not possible to identify all 9 orders. Seated in the front row are 4 figures: Saint Paul, with sword and book; John the Evangelist, as indicated by the inscription on the right sleeve. On the opposite side, Saint Peter holds a book and the keys.
I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven.
Next to him is his brother Andrew, in a prayerful attitude. In recent times, some scholars have raised doubts about the identification of the latter. The physiognomic type is, however, the usual one, and the green mantle is traditional in the iconography of the Apostle. Thus Fra Angelico also depicts him in the panels of the Last Judgment already mentioned, where in addition the Apostle holds the cross, his traditional attribute. Immediately recognizable is Saint Dominic, marked by a star, symbol of wisdom. Moreover, according to Dominican tradition, it is also a sign of predestination, since it is said that on the day of Dominic's baptism, his godmother saw a star shining on the saint's forehead. His iconography is completed by the lily, emblem of purity but also of his cult to the Virgin. In the corresponding position on the right should be Saint Francis. The other two founding saints of the monastic orders are Augustine, wearing the bishop's mitre, and Benedict, wearing the black habit. There are also two militant church witnesses. The deacon saint could be Stephen or Lawrence. The Pope, wearing a triregnum, could conceal the identity of Gregory the Great. Below the figure of Christ, suspended in the air, are three angels. Two of them blurred in their ethereal consistency. The one in the middle raises the cross. The one on the right holds two other symbols of the Passion, the spear and the crown of thorns. The one on the left announces the judgment with his trumpet.
And then all the peoples of the earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other.
Open graves can be seen on the earth. In the moment depicted by Fra Angelico, the Last Judgment has already taken place. The sentence has been passed and the risen are already separated into the two groups of the good and the bad. Light and shadow accompany this separation. Beside the now empty tombs, the Saviors express their joy and gratitude to the Judge, demonstrated in embraces with the angels and in gestures of prayer. Having completed the ritual of thanksgiving, some of the blessed already seem to be turning towards paradise. The group of blessed is not only made up of cardinals and bishops, but above all a large number of religious from different orders. To the right, the damned are pulled towards hell. The expression of the faces, the gestures of the hands, the posture of the bodies render well the disappointment, the discouragement, the repulsion. A range of feelings that goes as far as anguish and despair. In specific, the pose of the figure of the woman tormented by the devil is to be related to the similar one in the Massacre of the Innocents in the Armadio degli Argenti. The late dating is also justified by this analogy. The devils show no regard. They press, shove, use whips and pitchforks, jostle and brutalize, even going so far as to pounce on the desperate figures. The work reveals the master's attention to the new perspective and humanistic culture, while mitigating Masaccio's artistic lesson in favor of an exaltation of ideal beauty. Through a detailed and analytical drawing, combined with a clear and luminous color. The Ascension follows the iconographic tradition exemplified by Andrea di Bonaiuto's fresco in the ancient chapter house of the Dominican convent of Santa Maria Novella in Florence. But in a shortened version. The angels warning the apostles of Christ's ascension are missing. The dimension of the scene is all transcendent, with the gold background marked by thick wavy lines. What is only perceived in the Armadio degli Argenti is made manifest here. The figure of Christ is based on the hieratic figure of the Transfiguration, frescoed in the convent of Saint Mark. The gesture of the arms, however, is less impressive, with the signs of the Passion still clearly visible. The deep folds of his cloak ripple to indicate his ascension. The narrow silhouette of the panel, or its eventual cropping, shows us only 10 of the 12 apostles. There is a veritable sampler of hairstyles in those on the back, including baldness. The rendering of the figure of the Virgin is remarkable. Frontal and hieratic like that of her son, she observes his ascent, lifting only her eyes to heaven. In Pentecost, too, the number of apostles is reduced. Here 9 are depicted. Otherwise, the composition follows the iconographic tradition, also exemplified by some illuminations by Lorenzo Monaco and his circle. The descent of the Holy Spirit takes place on the upper floor of a building. And that is why the entrance on the ground floor is closed.
Then the apostles returned to Jerusalem from the hill called the Mount of Olives, a Sabbath day's walk from the city. When they arrived, they went upstairs to the room where they were staying.
Fra Angelico depicts not only the descent of the Holy Spirit, but also Peter addresses the crowd.
Now there were staying in Jerusalem God-fearing Jews from every nation under heaven. When they heard this sound, a crowd came together in bewilderment, because each one heard their own language being spoken.
By synecdoche, given the small space, the crowd is represented by the two people listening in front of the gate. The apostle with the open book to the left of Peter is probably consulting the auctoritates of the Old Testament. Indeed, in his speech, Peter invokes the words of the prophet Joel and 2 Psalms of David.
In the last days, God says, I will pour out my Spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams.